Welcome back to the Have Not Room. I am Ben here with Brian. We are here to do a quick update on Big Brother 28. We've missed some weeks here. Brian and I have gone on a little vacation together. So
Yes, I guess if you're into LRGs, I played in Survivor New York, and Ben helped on production. So that is why our schedules were all messed up and we missed some weeks. But we're back here for the rest of the summer. No more LRGs for me. I don't think any more for you, right, Ben?
nope, I'm good for the summer here.
All right.
Yeah.
So what is happening in the Big Brother house?
Yeah, since we last really checked in on this show, we have lost both Chuck and now Kamu. Both have exited the house, and now we are headed into the new week. D is the current HOH. The feeds are down right now for the veto competition, which we'll get into. And she has nominated Lala, Taylor, and Drew. Which is shouldn't be a surprise, but it is a little bit of a surprise. We can, I guess, talk about the line of happenings that has gotten us to the point where Drew is on the block on D's HOH here.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say that I'm surprised that Drew ended up being on the block, but really, these veterans do not enjoy him. It seems they have a huge hate boner out for our boy Drew. I don't really get it. It seems like he's been nothing but exceptionally loyal to the vets, but they will find a way to blame him for shit.
Yeah, so I guess this kind of starts a little bit last week. We had Yash as the HOH and the veto winner. He puts D'Angela and Haley on the block. Haley is, I would say, the mistake here from Yash that kind of opens the door to shenaniganry. And that manifests itself in the form of Devins using his Diamond Power veto on D, putting up Kamu. Angela wins a blockbuster. Kamu goes home. In the process, though, a few things happened. First, we had the crossovers and FAP alliances that, both have Drew and Barrett as joint members that have kind of loosely been operating as a seven for a week or so. Formalize their formalized into an actual seven-person alliance the night before Devins uses the Diamond Power veto. It's called the Mosh Pit. This is basically the point of this is to make sure that Devins and the Icons have the votes to get Kamu out before they make this move. And they want to make sure that they are good with FAP and in particular Mallory and Melody going into the next week, and that they won't be targeted at least for 1 week. That is the premise behind this forming this alliance formally. Unfortunately, in the process of this move on Kamu, a few things kind of happen here. Devins not as much, but Dee and Angela in particular kind of rest on their laurels after the move was made, after the mosh pit was formalized, and don't really do a ton of social or strategic check-ins with Mallory and Melody throughout the week. And while that's happening, Kamu, Yash, Taylor are all campaigning hard to try to flip the Littles to keep Kamu, basically pitching like, hey, Kamu is going after the Icons. He can be a tool for us to go after them. They're the most power. Kamu is one guy, the Icons are three. They're more threatening as a trio than Kamu is as an individual. Let's keep Kamu around, at least for now, so that he can. They've been, and Kamu says this in his eviction speech. They were saying, either be my shield or be my sword. And the premise is the Icons are still going to have to target Kamu in the subsequent weeks if they win power. And Kamu is a good competitor who has, basically no reason not to just immediately go after the Icons. So he can be their shield, he can be their sword. That was their pitch. And for parts of the week, this pitch did work on the Littles, and Mallory and Melody meaningfully considered their options of keeping Kamu in the case, specifically that he was up against Haley. They were fine with losing Haley. They eventually are able to realize how counting works and can count to 5, and realize that in the case that we have seen played out, where Angela wins the blockbuster, they don't have the votes regardless without Drew and Barrett, because the 5 crossover members make up a majority of the voters at that point with Angela off the block. And so you wouldn't be able to do Lala, Taylor, Melody, Mallory as like some kind of majority. So they eventually move off of this because it's very clear that Drew and Barrett are never going to get on board, with at least sending Angela home. And even with sending Haley home over Condon. So this flips back, forth. At a certain point on, I believe, Thursday morning, they come up with a premise of like, hey, Kamu is going home, but we don't want to piss off Yash and Taylor. What if we deliberately vote the wrong way to create a split vote, and then basically say, look, Drew was the one that flipped at the last second. He was the one that screwed this all up. They get to be the good guys, at least with the Taylors and the Yashes. But this would obviously significantly piss off the Icons. And Devins, throughout all of this, because Drew is getting this information from the Littles that they're wavering, brings it to the Icons and says, hey, they're wavering. I'm trying my best to keep them on track. Barrett's not helping. He's doing nothing. And, you know, I think we're still all good, but just, you know, be prepared, because like there is like a non-zero chance that they might actually waver on this vote. And Devin is basically like, if they waver on this vote, I'm blowing up your game, Drew. And I'm blowing up the entire house. I'm going to, you know, so it's your responsibility to make sure they stay in line, basically. Yeah.
Why is it Drew's responsibility and not Barrett's responsibility?
What a wonderful question, Ryan. What a wonderful question.
What does Barrett bring to the table here, Ben?
He's a good cuddle buddy for D. That's pretty much it.
That's a good point. You can't really replace that, I guess, in the Big Brother house. But yeah, I don't get it. I don't see what Drew is doing to make the Icons feel like they can't trust him. They went after him, and you know, through Haley as a proxy earlier in the season, and he still stayed loyal to them. At a certain point, it's like, Drew, you got to be against them, because whether you're with them or against them, they think you're against them.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, you know, we'll obviously get into what's going on currently, yesterday and today. But it would not surprise me if Drew stays this week, which it's looking likely that he will. He doesn't just fall back in with the Icons, depending on what the subsequent HOH outcome is.
But hey, at least he got a time capsule, right? That's good.
Yeah, he won a power. We've been you know, talking for weeks about Drew potentially getting a power. You know, there was the whole Coin of Destiny collective Drewlusion. So yeah, obviously he got a very useful power. He got the Never Not Pass.
Listen, the Never Not Pass probably does help. Eating normal food instead of slop is probably like helpful in competitions, but it's not going to save him. You know, like, I guess maybe if he was on slop and needed to win a veto, maybe that could be a thing, but it's not like people can't win competitions on slop. So this is a disappointing outcome for me.
I mean, when week 1, when these powers were revealed to us on Unlocked, like, everyone was like, why the hell is the Never Not Pass amongst these other powers that actually have game implications? Like, the spectrum of power of the 6 options is like so huge. You have like the Never Not Pass, which is functionally useless, the replay power, which is like, it does something, but it's like very, very marginal, doesn't do much. You had kind of the bribe and the mystery competitor as like the middle two powers that have some, agency. Well, obviously we're going to get into what Dee ends up doing with her BB bribe. And then you have the Diamond Power Veto and the Coin of Destiny, which are like far and away the two best options. And so when you have Devins getting the Diamond Power Veto, using it to take out Kamu, one of the biggest threats of the season, theoretically could have won the game, is being talked about now as like potentially the strongest pre-juror in the history of the franchise, excluding returning players. That compared to like not being a have-not for like a week or two, like these are not even like in the same universe. Again, because they have this like have-not rotation where they basically like pseudo volunteer. Drew's rotation was over for the season anyways. Like they're speculating that there's only going to be one more week of have-nots, like at jury they'll end. That's what happened last year. They ended at the final 9, final 8. The have-nots for next week are already pre-picked, and Drew is not one of them. So like even the never not task he got is going to end up being useless. Never mind the fact that he could still theoretically go home this week.
Right. What do you think of Daora Kid's comment in our chat? Let me show it here. He says, I think that they think Drew is a bigger target, which I can agree, because Barrett hasn't done anything since like week 3. Drew's more active, and yesterday he went off on Lala and Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously going to get to the nomination ceremony blow up that happened that we haven't seen yet, because it's obviously, we're not going to obviously see it until the tomorrow night's episode. But the issue is like, yeah, Drew is a target. Lala and Taylor in particular don't like him, don't trust him. Yash, I think, likes him more on a personal level, but still like doesn't really like him that much, doesn't trust him at all. Like, we'll talk about what happened with the bribe with Yash. I think if Yash wins HOH next week and Drew's still in the house, Yash is firmly going for Drew, maybe Barrett. Like there's a ton of reasons to keep Drew around, at least until like the final 8-ish. I think 8 is where you would take a shot at somebody like Drew. We are currently at 11. Like, it's just a few weeks too soon to be making a move like this, in my opinion, when like I don't really think Drew is as dangerous as I think he is.
Yeah, no, I agree there. Do you want to talk about the nomination ceremony?
Well, let's start, I guess, with Dee's confrontation with the mosh pit. That's kind of like the inciting incident of what the rest of this week is going to look like. Yash comes up to Dee in the HOH room. We didn't see most of this conversation because it ends up, they've hid most of the bribe talk off of the feeds, presumably because there's producer, interception on the conversation to make sure that they're not breaking the rules. So I guess we won't really see how exactly this conversation fully plays out again until tomorrow night on the episode, hopefully. But Yash basically completely throws Drew under the bus to Dee. He dumps a bunch of what Drew did last week. In particular, Drew was in the conversations with Kamu and Yash, where Kamu was pushing Dee as a target, where Kamu and Yash were determining what Yash's nominees were going to be. Dee, Angela, Barrett was on the table, Melody was on the table, Haley was who we ended up landing on. And this is true, but this is information that Drew had already brought to Dee in Devin's last week, in particular to Dee, which is why Dee was so anti-Kamu, which is why Dee and Devin were pushing for Kamu to be the one evicted with Diamond Power Veto. So this is information that Dee already knows, or should know, that Drew is in these rooms, because he took all the information that he got when he was in these rooms and brought it back to her already. But Yash is basically framing it like Drew was totally on board with you being the target. He was, pushing for you to go up on the block. Yada yada yada. He wasn't really he had no pushback. When Drew actually did have pushback, particularly on Barrett as the third nom, he did do a lot of work to make sure that Haley was the third nom. which I think a lot of people gave him credit for last week. I think last week was one of Drew's best weeks in the game, and Yash is basically flipping and spinning a lot of what happened to make it look like Drew was culpable for things he wasn't. And then on top of that, you had Drew basically throughout the week was lying to Yash and Taylor, saying that he was on board with Keith and Kamu when he definitely wasn't at any point. That's additionally information that Yash is spilling, like, hey, Drew was on board, like he changed his mind last minute, and then he came to us and was like, after it was actually Melody and Mallory that weren't the ones that were on board. Like, again, Yash is lying, spinning the truth, flipping things that Drew did on its head, etc. So Dee gets all this information. It seems like she does, at least to a degree, believe some of Yash's lies. And she formulates a plan to make Drew the target and basically get the rest of the mosh pit on board with Drew being on the block at the very least. So she calls a mosh pit meeting. All 7 of them go up to the HOH room. And she starts essentially interrogating Drew about the goings-on of last week. And at this point, Drew is doing a pretty good job, I would say, of just explaining the truth, like describing the events as they happened, because the events as they happened are favorable to him. He was fully on board with the Icons at that point. He did put a lot of work in to try to protect Dee and Angela, to make sure Devin didn't go on the block, to make sure Barrett didn't go on the block, to make sure, Haley was at least on the block so that they would have a chance for all of them to stay. He didn't at that point know about the Diamond Power of Veto. He brought all of this information to Dee so that Dee and Devins would know that Kamu was staking them. All of the information that he's telling them is both true and exculpatory. So it seems like he's doing a good job. And then Dee is like, okay, well, all of this is contradicting what Yash just told me earlier. So let's bring Yash up. And now here's some important context that I skipped. During the talk where Yash is trashing Drew's game to Dee and the Icons, Dee successfully bribes Yash with a handshake deal. She says, I will use my bribe on you. You get the $5,000. In addition, now this part she doesn't actually have to keep up. She will keep him safe this week. She will not nominate him before, or after veto. And in return, what Yash will do for taking the bribe, for taking the 5K, he, on his next HOH, the next HOH he wins, will not put up any of the 3 Icons at all. So to make sure that we understand the parameters of how this power works, Yash is now contractually obligated to not put up the Icons if possible on his next HOH. Dee is not contractually obligated to fulfill her side because what she gave Yash is a 5K. She theoretically can still backdoor Yash this week if she wants. So this is key information, and this is part of why I think they're more willing to believe Yash's lies and less willing to put him on the block and get rid of him because he's been neutralized as a threat. So they bring Yash up to this mosh pit meeting. It's now the 8 of them. It's basically everyone in the house except for Taylor, Lala, and Haley are in this HOH room. And Dee starts essentially interrogating Yash in front of the room the same way she did Drew. Yash doesn't do as good of a job at explaining things. He's very vague in a lot of his descriptions. But when Dee starts to try to dig more into details and tries to cross-reference the things that Yash and Drew have said that are not lining up, Drew, as for whatever reason, whether it's because he's a not confrontational person, is his excuse that he gives later, starts lying and backing up Yash's lies that contradict the information that he had just previously said in the room before they had brought Yash up. So now Drew is lying for no reason in a way that makes him look worse to protect Yash and screw himself. And by the time this ends, it's pretty clear that Drew is 100% going on the block. We missed the end of the conversation, the meeting. They cut out away from the feeds for some reason. But afterwards, Dee talks to Barrett alone and is like, yeah, I'm going to put Drew up. Barrett is like, I think that's not a great idea. And Dee's like, well, yeah, I think it is a good idea. He's super sketchy. And Barrett's like, you know, do you have a reason? Like, what is a reason you want to put him up? And Dee's like, he's super sketchy. And he just lied in that meeting in front of all of us, which he did. But his, like, the overarching things that he was saying that were true should have been exculpatory, but he then followed it up with lies for no reason, so it was bad. Barrett, like, fights, I would say, the, like, required minimum amount to try to, like, stop Dee from doing this. Eventually he folds, and, you know, then they go downstairs. Dee pulls in Mallory and Melody and basically spills to Mallory and Melody all of the stuff that Drew has been writing on them about to the icons for the last couple of weeks. And, you know, Dee's like, so you guys agree that Drew is sketchy, right? You know, he's a snake. And they're like, yeah, I guess. And then she sends them away after telling them that, yeah, okay, now that we all agree that Drew is a snake, you know, we're going to put him on the block. And they're like, okay, I guess. And then they leave and they're like, this is not good for various reasons. And yeah, so Drew is nominated with Lala and Taylor. At that point, the intended target is Drew. At the nomination ceremony, some sort of confrontation starts. It's unclear to me who actually starts it, whether it was Drew or Taylor. It seems very, like, the retellings have been inconsistent on, like, who kind of, like, fired the first shot between Drew and Taylor. But essentially what ends up happening is Drew pledges his full loyalty to the people that make up the mosh pit. He throws, in particular, Taylor and Lala, but also Yash to a degree, under the bus. He reiterates all of the information from this summit that, you know, this, like, revolutionary meeting that Lala held towards the end of her HOH week, basically saying, hey, all of us need to go after the icons. They're the real threat, which him and Barrett had already, you know, ratted out to the icons. We saw this in the episodes as well. So he like basically publicly airs out that entire meeting. Taylor and Lala are trying to defend themselves. They are in the process seemingly either lying or telling half-truths in order to try to defend themselves from the accusations that Drew is levying towards them. There's seemingly a lot of screaming. Haley gets dragged in at some point. Melody gets dragged in at some point because, you know, I think Taylor and Lala look to Melody and Mallory to try to, like, you know, clear their name on this meeting because they were present. And Melody essentially is like, no, Lala is lying. You know, she was 1000% leading this meeting to try to get people to target the icons. And it completely blows up. Everyone's mad at everyone. After this is over, Taylor and Lala are, like, visibly upset at Drew. You know, the feeds come back with Drew celebrating with the crossovers. They're all very happy that he did this. Because it draws very clear lines in the sand to the point where now, like, he essentially can't play both sides anymore, even though he wasn't fully playing both sides like before. Like, he was always on the crossovers, you know, icons, tool shed / you know, mosh pit side, whatever you want to call it. And he was always just using his connections with the other people to extract information to rat back. And so that's kind of where we're at. I think at this point, the icons have now moved off of Drew as a target. They're not seemingly willing to take him off the block. If right now, Angela and Barrett are the two people playing the veto. If Angela, Barrett, and Dee win the veto, I think the plan is to keep the noms the same. There is now talk. Devins really wants to target Mallory. Taylor does seem to be the main target right now. If Taylor wins one of the two comps or they just change their mind randomly, I think the backup target has moved on to Mallory as a potential renom. Lala is still an option, although I think that they don't really see her as like a huge priority to get out. There is still a non-zero chance that Drew could go home. I think there's still a non-zero chance that Yash ends up being the renom, even though it's leaning Mallory right now. So I would say any of the five of those people at this point can go home. I would say Taylor and Mallory being the main two right now that look the most likely to go home.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been an interesting week so far and a very interesting season. I know a lot of people online are very upset about how much has gone the Icons' ways. I get that for sure, because obviously with any kind of voting thing, and they've done this how many times, Ben, where they invited people back and then had fan votes or had someone's sister, in Alyssa, be part of a fan vote thing. So that definitely is like nudging stuff towards the Icons, but it's not like the Icons have been super dominant in challenges. I think the newbies have had the opportunity to really take a shot at the Icons, and they just haven't been able to execute on those shots,
Yeah, it's kind of a situation where everyone has been playing very messy and making a lot of mistakes, but because of the intrinsic advantages the Icons have had, their messiness and mistakes have had lesser consequences than most of the other players. But if the newbies had, for example, if Yash could have played his HOH week better last week to make it more likely that even with the Diamond Power veto, somebody like a Barrett could have gone home. Or even potentially an Angela or a Dee. I mean, Angela ends up winning the blockbuster, so more likely would have been Dee. But I think there was a path for, if Yash puts up the three Icons, Devins probably uses the Diamond Power veto on himself, and he said that he'd put up Taylor in that case. We would have Taylor versus Angela versus Dee. If Angela still wins the blockbuster, now we have a Taylor versus Dee vote. That's, I think, a much easier sell to the Melody and Mallory's of the world of like get Dee out and save Taylor, as opposed to if Kamu was on the block, then like I think that's like a harder sell because Melody and Mallory just hated Kamu as a person. So like there was, I think, a path for Yash to get a Dee or maybe a Barrett if he had made better noms, even with the Diamond Power veto. Lala on her HOH. I know a lot of people at the time were praising her HOH. Her HOH was extremely messy for no reason. She didn't use it effectively enough to actually solidify power. It really didn't solidify the power until Yash's HOH after. It was very lucky for Lala, I think, that Yash won the subsequent HOH, and she was able to kind of then, snowball some of that momentum. Whereas like most outcomes would have had a really bad, situation for her. And because you had Yash win that HOH and then have it get ruined with the Diamond Power veto, like a lot of the opportunities that were available to Lala during her HOH are now just gone. And I think that a lot of players, Melody and Mallory in particular, Mallory especially, have been playing scared. We didn't say this yet, but we had this HOH comp that Dee wins. Barrett and Mallory were like the two in the end with Dee. Like it kind of came down to those three from what we've been told. And both Barrett and Mallory have said that they threw the competition to Dee. So like Barrett doing that, I can like kind of understand. Dee is one of his closest allies, if not his closest ally at this point. And like, as much as they're anti-Drew and continuously, treat Drew like a bad dog and like stuff his face in like the like shit or like, spray him with the water bottle to try to get him back in line. They don't do that to Barrett. So like Barrett I think has a reason to at least feel safe and okay with D winning, even though he should be starting to win comps now. Like, this is where Darren needs to start winning comps. Mallory throwing this comp to D is like completely indefensible. She is like one of the more likely people to go home this week. And if she does go home this week after throwing it, it's 100% her fault. She played last week really poorly into throwing it to D. If she goes home, like there's nothing. I can't even say that like she got screwed or like unlucky. She's been playing bad. So yeah.
Unfortunate. I know that a lot of people like her, but she's maybe just not built for this game.
Yeah, I think that's it. I really do think it's that. Like, I think there's like Lala, Mallory, like there's a lot. I think there's a handful of people on the season that just like don't have the killer instinct to like really, succeed well. And like one of the reasons the icons are succeeding is because, like, to a degree, because they have the experience, to a degree, because this season is in many ways like playing with house money for them. Like, they are playing very aggressively and fearlessly. They are taking like huge swings, and that is often rewarded in Big Brother. And playing, as we saw, last year, we had the famous like Lauren is scared meme, right? Like,
right.
You can't play Big Brother scared. Like, you can play safe for a bit, but like at a certain point, you can't play passively. You can't play to not lose. You have to like start taking swings. You have to start winning comps and like making plays. And it just kind of feels like Mallory in particular is not cut out for doing that.
Right. Well, anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to yet?
No, I mean, look, I know, as far as like from an entertainment perspective, and this has happened multiple times throughout the season, where like somebody like on the list of hypothetical HOHs headed into a Thursday night, somebody who's like towards the bottom of the list of who you would theoretically want to win HOH for like, for good feeds, for TV content, for like entertainment purposes, wins the HOH, but then they still do something completely deranged and crazy anyways. And that's, I think, happened again here. Like people, week 2, right? And when Devin won HOH, they were like, of course, one of the worst outcomes. And then, he has the big blow up with Rome at the nomination ceremony, the fight and all of that, and then we had like similarly with like Haley putting up Drew. And now again, here we have, D putting up Drew in this whole blow up that happens in the nomination ceremony. I don't think a lot of people would have expected that, but D has been playing very chaotically. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm hopeful that we can get an interesting HOH outcome for next week and maybe put the icons in the hot water. It's just that if a Mallory or a Taylor do end up going this week, like we're kind of just looking at like Lala, maybe Melody has people that can win and go after the icons because they've fully roped back in Haley. They've made this bribe with Yash so he can't target them. They're likely going to get out one of Mallory or Taylor. So we're looking at like maybe 2 or 3 outcomes next week where the icons are actually in hot water. Assuming Drew does stick with them still, which is seeming like he is.
Right. Yeah, we'll have to see. Well, Ben, anything you want to plug or promote before we get on out of here?
No, you can find me on Blue Sky at Ben Sharon. I've been posting here and there about the season. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. I know a lot of people have their issues with the season. I think it's been like very chaotic. It's been like you literally don't know what's going to happen day over day. There's been a lot of last minute vote flips or attempted vote flips. A lot of people playing really messy or like, not optimally in ways that are entertaining. I think like, one of the reasons last season was so fun, despite a lot of bad gameplay, was because the bad gameplay was actively bad gameplay as opposed to passively bad gameplay. It's something I talk about a lot, like the difference. And this season has had a lot of active bad gameplay. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. I don't think the season is dead in the water. I think there's a lot of game left to be played. There is a lot of paranoia. A lot of people make random decisions and change their minds constantly. So
should be fun, and we will be here covering it again. Sorry for the, missed time due to Survivor New York, but other than that, thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Have Not Room. Please follow on podcast services. Subscribe to our YouTube channels, either on the Have Not Room or the Better Radio channel, which hosts all of our podcasts. Check out the main channel where you get everything, where I cover video games in the form of video essays, video game reviews. Check out Those Fake Nerds for video game news, like trending stuff there, and Wicked Good Sports for sports news. I think that's all of them, Ben. It's a lot. It's
a lot.
Yeah, tons of content. Go check it out. Other than that, thank you so much for checking this one out, and we'll see you in the next one.